This week on the To Be the Church podcast, we talk about blowing a ram's horn. We talk about rats. We talk about egg intake, and we talk about immigration. Welcome to the To Be the Church podcast, where we explore what it looks like to truly be the church in today's culture. It's Super Bowl week right now, y'all. You guys care?
Shut it.
Okay.
No. So, dude, yesterday, so we were talking off air one time about eating protein. Did we talk about that on the air? All the eggs?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because according to Ben, dude, I told my dad how many eggs I've been eating. And he's like, dude, what's your cholesterol? I go, Dad, that's not a true
it's not a thing.
Yeah. And then he was like, yeah, I think you're right. And I go, Ben told me. He's like, oh, then it got to be true.
I'm the authority.
You're my nutritionist when I have a heart attack. So we were talking about protein and how to get protein like in your veins. Mm-hmm. And you were saying, dude, you drink protein powder by just mixing it with water, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I did that yesterday.
That's the only thing I do.
Yeah, and I wanted to barf.
You didn't like it?
Dude, Chalky McChalkersons. Like,
did you?
I'm still going.
How did you mix it? Do you have a shaker bottle?
I do, but I mixed it with a spoon.
Well, that's why.
Yeah.
I'm an idiot.
You don't have the little
I didn't feel like reaching up in the cabinet.
He did like 3 swirls with a spoon. And
no, not 3 swirls, like at least 9.
Are you coughing up powder? Just protein powder?
Bro, it was bad.
You normally mix it with milk or what?
I normally put it in like a smoothie. I
Yeah.
don't mix it with liquids. They say mix it with almond milk, but I don't believe in almond milk.
Dude, so, one of my goals this year is to eat a lot more protein, which is because I hit you up and I was like, dude, tell me how to do this because you do it really well. And I made the worst smoothie. I made a smoothie that was 80 grams of protein per 12 ounces.
What?
80. Yes.
How? It
was a double scoop. No, it was more than that. So it was a double scoop of powder, which is the 50 grams. A entire like little container of unflavored Greek yogurt, which is like 20 grams of protein, but just horrifically disgusting. And then, but the problem, and then a couple things of fruit. The problem is that the only protein powder I had, because I usually have vanilla, but I'd run out, was orange creamsicle.
Oh, so dude, why do you buy that?
Dude, with water, it's amazing. I love it. It's my favorite protein powder. But as a mixer, like in like a smoothie or protein drink, not the best.
Yeah.
My 6-year-old was like, I'll drink it. He finished it for me, but I couldn't do it. It was bad, real gross. How many eggs do you eat a day?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it depends. I've been doing a lot of like not eating till dinner, like just one meal a day. So eggs are usually if I'm eating like lunch or breakfast. But
when you eat eggs, how many do you eat?
Oh man, the at least 6, usually like 8 to 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford to do that in today's economic climate.
Well,
Yeah,
you could if
rough.
you knew someone who just got a bunch of chicks that are
Whoa,
gonna
I
lay
did.
eggs.
I did. Dozen chickens.
So,
Nice.
They're not producing for a little while, but when they do, I mean, I'll just charge you guys a little below market rate.
So I might have told you this before, but we had chickens, but we were like not in the country. We were in like in East Vancouver, and I guess like there's a pretty bad rat problem in general in East Vancouver, but then the chickens attract them, and so we ended up getting rid of our chickens whenever our next door neighbor's 5-year-old granddaughter came up to Grandma and said, "Grandma, I found a cat in the backyard," and was holding a rat that was like this big. And then like the neighbor told Katie about it, and Katie like in the back of her mind was like, "That is totally our fault because of all the chickens." So we got rid of them.
There's a rat problem in East Vancouver, huh?
Google it.
Wow.
All right, let's start here. A few weeks ago, we had an episode about the regulative principle and like what should be allowed in gathered worship, and we got a really good comment from our friend Ben, and he said this. He said, "Now hear me out. I know a guy. He has a ram's horn. We give him a few shekels. We can get him to blow into it before and after every service." So Ben, big serious question: Would that be in bounds with the regulative principle?
I mean, didn't they do that in the Old Testament? So there you go.
Yeah, scripturally prescribed.
They did a lot of stuff in the Old Testament.
Yeah, slaughtering animals, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Those are called a shofar, right?
Ooh, he also
Yeah,
he also
the
says
shofar.
I might be able to get a silver trumpet for Easter, but no guarantees.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
That's
wouldn't.
like, like if you do a Mexico mission trip, like the go-to souvenir is like one of those poncho-looking things, like the poncho sweatshirt.
Or sombrero.
Yeah, or the wrestler mask. If you go to Israel, it's like the shofar, but no one really considers, how do I get this back? So you're like carrying it on the plane, and
Awkward.
yeah, they're cool though.
Yeah, no, I probably wouldn't do those in gatherings.
Dude, so here in Vancouver, there was a guy who was going around to different churches, like on Sunday mornings, and like showing up with his shofar and just like blowing it randomly during the service. And Nathan, our executive pastor of operations, caught wind of it because the different executive pastors were talking like, "Hey, just heads up, this guy's coming." And he never showed up here on Sunday, but he showed up on like a random weekday, and he's like, "Could I just blow this in the lobby a couple times as like a form of a blessing for you guys?" And I like thought about it for a minute, and I was like, all right. So this dude just I was like,
Well, and look how much East Vancouver's growing.
It's
dude,
that
that's
was-
why.
from that day to this, right? It's amazing.
Yeah. Some of the weird stuff you get asked, like sitting in a church building all week.
Yeah,
But,
it's beautiful.
all right, what do you want to talk about today?
So I got a text from a friend and longtime listener, first time caller to the To Be the Church podcast. His name is Will. And Will sent me a text and said, dude, this is for To Be the Church. He said, for TBTC, just saw this on someone's car. Give me your theological reaction. And the thing that he saw was this, the bumper sticker. And the bumper sticker says, heaven has a wall and strict immigration policies. Hell has open borders. And that is the bumper sticker that he saw. So he sent it to us and asked for our theological reaction.
Yeah, I saw this in Vancouver as well. Yeah, interesting.
On your wife's car.
Yeah, on my car as I put it on there. Yeah.
Bro, I wonder if I can find it. It appears that phrase originally was like obviously about the immigration stuff, but it was in a TV ad from a family grocery chain in Arkansas. Like that was their advertisement.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, immigration, the immigration debate. Well, from a theological standpoint, does heaven have a wall and strict immigration policies?
Where do you even start with
Hell,
this sort
hell
of thing?
has open borders.
Yeah. A lot of Christians, unfortunately, do have this idea of heaven that is kind of, the pearly gates, the streets of gold,
Yeah.
like taking a lot of the imagery.
St. Peter out front.
Yeah.
A lot of jokes start that way.
Yeah. But just so we're clear, like we're going to live on a new earth, right? God's going to come and make all things new. Heaven and earth will become one. God will be with his people. The people will be with God. And so think like Genesis 1 and 2, but glorified even more. No sin, no death, a physical earth, not just floating in the clouds, not just, behind the walls of the pearly gates or anything like that. So that's kind of one problem with it. Yeah, I don't know. What else do you think? I mean, obviously it's talking about our country's immigration issues and borders, and that anyway.
So literalistically, it is saying heaven has exclusive, there's an exclusive policy, an exclusionary even policy to reaching heaven, as it were, and hell you could just go to without really doing anything. You don't have to go through any hoops.
Yeah, I mean, yes,
We're
must.
struggling to respond to it theologically because it's theologically kind of stupid.
It's just like such a nonsensical thing that it's like it's just dumb. Like,
yeah.
Unfortunately, though, someone really loved it enough to put it on their car.
Well, I
you
think
know?
people could see it. What you could do is you could see it and you could think, heaven has a wall and strict immigration policies. Hell has open borders. And dude, I can think of a lot of ways that you could look at that. And in our current moment, in our culture as a Christian, that you could look at that and go, okay, they're saying heaven, like there are things, you must repent and believe to have life with God. Whereas, if you just keep going in your sin, you go to hell. And so they would think on that, and they wouldn't think of it too much theologically. They wouldn't be thinking about the new heavens and new earth. They'd just think like, and then hell. Yeah, that's just kind of where you're at. But there's other ways, because I feel like people could look at that and think of it just on a very, very surfacey linear level. And then from there they would go, oh, and this also fits my policy preference in this moment, which is that like the good team, heaven, says that you should have a wall and strict immigration policies, and the bad team, hell, that's the bad team, it's just like whatever, mayhem, and so it could confirm biases and those things. But there's stuff like this at times that I think is meant to be a little satirical, which I look at this, and I think one mistake we can make, which we've been maybe making this mistake, but not really intentionally. I don't think we're taking this super serious. But I think a mistake you can make at times with these kind of little political things like this is trying to take it too seriously, like they're really trying to make that point. Like I think the person doing this is trying to get people to think about the policy in our current cultural moment in a way that they want them to think about it. And if you even look at it that way, like it's a much better thing to, like the way the person who made the bumper sticker would think. It's a much better thing to have strict immigration policies than to just have open borders, right? Like that's where, and they're just trying to get people to look at it, laugh, but then in every bit of satire, there's a little bit of a thread that they're trying to prove a point.
Yeah, and I think whether this person was joking or not, there are a lot of kooky people out there. And this is coming from someone, I am conservative.
A cuckoo person?
And I am cuckoo. But as a conservative, there are plenty of people who are on the conservative, right, Republican side who wouldn't be joking with that sort of thing. And there's been this blend of their political views and their faith, this integration of their politics and their walk with Jesus that makes it really just messy and not accurate. Because that whole thing is kind of making like America and heaven or hell like this. I don't know. It's like a lot of people do. I think making the United States almost like a new Israel, new people of God, which I just think is not biblically accurate or helpful. So,
well, here's what the guy who actually put it in the grocery store ad. So I found the grocery store ad. It's not a TV ad. It's like a newspaper ad.
Okay.
It's Mac's quote of the week. He has a quote of the week apparently in his thing. But he said this in response to this. He said, if I used a political message, and I'm very aware it's political, to highlight Jesus Christ, then I'm guilty of it. That's my meaning of the whole thing, is that people are prepared to go to heaven, or maybe they aren't. I thought it was a perfect time because everybody was talking about the border. Some people want it, and some people don't want us to have one. So he was like,
that is hilarious. he's actually not trying to make a political statement,
but he's trying to be evangelistic.
That's awesome.
Also,
I like how you kind of read it in a little bit of an Arkansas
voice. I was working on that.
That was good.
And then one of his
that's your niche.
It says this guy who's one of his defenders, I don't know if it's his lawyer or what, but he was trying to explain it, and he said the gates and wall of heaven are the blood of Jesus Christ. No one enters there illegally except according to his law by accepting Jesus Christ as Lord. A wall along our southern border should bear the same, barring those who would enter illegally our country, and allowing all who would enter legally according to the law of the land.
Interesting.
Life's just different down in Arkansas.
That's great, man. That cracks me up. Yeah, I think that's great background, Tyler. So he was trying to make an evangelistic point with the old immigration debate. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't got a lot more.
Nothing.
You got nothing else for that? Yeah. So
this
yeah.
Show stinks. Our show stinks.
Were you 20 minutes yet, Cody?
So, well, let's go here with it though, to give a little bit of substance to it. And Cody, tell us as soon as we get to 20 minutes. So are there, let's talk more substantively on, because it's funny because this guy was trying to make an evangelistic point by utilizing something that was talked about when we were more thinking he was trying to make a political point with, by means of theological language. But, going on the political side of that, what should Christians think about the current immigration debate? To Be the Church. This is a To Be the Church podcast. So we have, obviously a major immigration debate in our culture. It's been raging for decades. I mean, at least 30 or 40 years that this has been a pretty major political issue. It is growing more and more. It's growing into more and more of an issue every single 4 years, every 2 years really, with the different elections. The midterms address it as well. It's become one of the top 2 to 3 issues in politics in America in the last, I'd say probably the last 10 to 15 years. So, what do Christians do with this? Because Christians, there are some Christians that approach it from there are laws, and people shouldn't break laws. You should respect the laws of a nation. One of the issues with immigration in America right now is that the law, the two sides kind of utilize it for their own purposes and are not really creating laws and policies or enforcing the laws or policies, whichever they think fits their deal. And so it's really a mess. It's a major humanitarian problem. It's a major, there's sex trafficking and drug trafficking that's rampant on our borders. And so there's a lot of human rights issues that are really big deal with these kind of things. I'm sure, depending on how closely you track the news, there was 40 migrants that were found dead in a truck. Remember this, 9 months ago in Texas, that had basically cooked to death because they were being brought over the border illegally and super hot. And it was in El Paso or somewhere, San Antonio, somewhere in Texas, where the truck was just left and people found it, opened it up. There's 40 dead people in there, that they were baked alive. So there's That's incentives terrible. For the worst people on the planet to do horrendous things to children and all sorts of things. And so it's a real mess. But then there's the argument that some people are having of in this, how do Christians be the church related to this, right?
So I think we're at 20 minutes now, so we're good.
Yeah, just ask it. Just leave it out there.
So this kind of is about this is related to what I was saying earlier about when people's politics and their Christian faith kind of bleed into each other, because, and it's not helpful to do that, because I think it's very possible to think politically what's best for our country is to have a strong border, to have laws that are enforced and all those things, while at the same time as a Christian and on an individual level saying, what has God called me in his word to do in regards to the vulnerable, the oppressed, the marginalized, and that being, compassion, care, those sorts of things. I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive.
That's what I was going to say. Do you think those have to be mutually exclusive?
No, that's what I'm saying. I think when people are saying like that bumper sticker, kind of equating the borders and their Christian faith, to me that's not helpful, because I think, it's not mutually exclusive to say I think we should have strong borders politically. That's what's best for our country. But at the same time, as a Christian, if I am encountering immigrants or people who are oppressed in certain ways or marginalized or whatever, God's word calls me to be compassionate, to love my neighbor, to try to meet their needs. But I feel like a lot of people say no because, I want strong borders. They have zero, the way people even talk about immigrants and stuff, there's zero compassion. They're, I think, forgetting the Imago Dei and that these are actual people created by God that have worth and value and dignity. So I think we can say both of those things that I said, and I don't think we've done very well as a church, Big C church, at kind of making that designation between what we believe politically versus how we should respond as the church.
What say you, Kansas City man?
Yeah, so I'm not disagreeing with you, but to play like devil's advocate, like, so is the answer to like, oh, people's faith and politics like bleed together where they almost just see them as like the same thing? Is the answer to like separate them completely, like to where it's like, oh, this is what I think politically and this is what I think as a Christian? Or is it healthier to like, as a Christian who like, to order the like in order of importance, like as far as like, this is what I think as a Christian and therefore this is what I think politically? Or are they just separate? You know what I'm saying? Like,
No, I think that you can do them together, and I don't think you're arguing for necessarily a different putting those two in different silos, right? Like we should definitely think Christianly in our politics, right?
yeah. So what happens when like what I think is best for America and like what I like know from Scripture don't line up?
Well, talk about that though on this issue. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't have strong feelings.
Okay.
I'm more living like the futility of trying to affect policy. So
Yeah, you're a political nihilist. Yeah. So
I think,
I have an answer to Tyler's quandary though.
well, and I'll say something, but then I want to hear what you have to say.
I don't want to hear what you have to say. Go ahead.
This show really stinks. So thinking Christianly about immigration would not only be how do we treat and care for immigrants who do make it in, but also I think it's loving to want to have strong border laws that prevent people coming in to do harm to people or bringing in substances, drugs, different things. And so it wouldn't be it'd be swinging the pendulum to say, in the name of Christianity, open the borders and let all the immigrants come, because that's how Jesus would have been like, well, that actually potentially could be causing harm to other people then that you're not loving. So
Yeah.
that's why I think you can say both these things. It's loving and good in a Christian to have strong borders. It's also loving and good in Christian to want to care for those who do come into our country, however they do, in a way that reflects the love of Christ. So I think we can say both those things.
Yeah, and I think that like the way the two sides, just the caricatures at least of the two sides, are like one side, like again in the political arguments in America, it seems like in this moment that the open border side plays the compassion card, right? Like if you don't want the borders opened, or if you're trying to put up the whole 2016 political realm, of that whole period of time, it was like, we build bridges, not walls. There was all these things from kind of the more progressive, quote unquote, Christian world, where it's like to have a border wall or to have strict immigration policies is not compassionate, and it means you're xenophobic, right? And then the other side is going, well, it's not Christian to be lawless, and so I think that those, there's these caricatures on either side, and I agree with you that you can be both, and I actually think to merge, to be Christian in our political stances is the best thing to do. And my personal opinion on it, on the immigration thing, would be lawlessness is not a Christian thing. Like, it's not the use of government. Government is instituted by God to reward the good and to punish any form of evil. And if you actually look at what's going on the border and what's been going on the border for these many years, the lawlessness of it all is incentivizes insane amounts of human rights violations. And it's not a matter of being, we need to be compassionate, so lawlessness needs to reign. It certainly is used by some people in a xenophobic way to like scare people into like wanting certain policies, the country's going to be taken over by such and such or whatever. And there can be racial undertones and those kind of xenophobic type things. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. I'm saying that and I'm also not trying to make like this certain middle ground. Personally, I go, lawlessness is not biblical, and incentivizes, we have all the anecdotal data to see it right now in real time, incentivizes all sorts of human rights abuses. If there were laws that were, stringent, there was whether it's a wall or whatever the best policies would be, were implemented on that border, there would be less lawlessness, right? And less lawlessness would be better for human rights, and which would be a more Christian standpoint. And at the same time, whether someone gets here, however someone gets here, love your neighbor, right? And then as a Christian, to be the church would be to like enter into the spaces where you're in contact with people, and you're caring for them, and you're caring for the vulnerable, and you're, adopting, and you're feeding the hungry, and caring for the sick, and doing all those kinds of things. So at the one time, as Christians, I think we need to address the humanitarian crisis that it is by loving our neighbor and by giving and going and sending and doing all those things. And at the same time, I think we should, I'm not quite as nihilistic, although I'm getting as cynical as you are on politics, Tyler. But welcome. But I think I think we should advocate for and try to elect people who are going to actually do something, and not just use it as like a political club. And I do think that the policies, I think if you watch politics closely, particularly the last 8 years, you will see that the sides are starting to recognize what the best policies are on the southern border. And I do think it includes probably a wall and more strict, policies there. And so I think that those things are eventually going to be incentivized from both left and right to happen. It's politics. So it's going to take like way longer than it should.
And making it maybe, I don't know if easier is the right word, but more efficient for people who really do want to come here and,
Sure.
and need to come here to be able to do it legally and those sorts of things. I know there are those ways, but clearly it's not so efficient that everyone that wants to can quickly
It's government,
or easily.
dude.
Yeah, there's
it's
all
government,
those things.
so it's never going to be efficient.
I just think as you were talking, like my last thing I'd say is Luke 10, like the parable of the Good Samaritan, like that was kind of Jesus's zinger in there, was that the one who proved to be a neighbor was one that politically, culturally, was supposed to hate, but then they loved them. And so, as we interact with anyone who our culture would say you shouldn't like them or you shouldn't care about them or they're an enemy, the Christian ethic is that we are to love them and meet their needs. And, that's ultimately what Jesus has done to us as his enemies, who he's made his friends, by dying for us. So just something to think about, being the church in regards to anyone that culture would say, no, you shouldn't care for them. The way we stick out is to actually love them.
It's beautiful. And on that note, we have definitely gone past 20 minutes.
We did it. If you stuck it out through all that crap at the beginning to the
We should
serious
probably
part,
timestamp like, hey, you should just start here if you don't want to.
yeah. Hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. Podcast@toBeTheChurch.com is the best way to do it. You can do it right there in the comments on YouTube. Have a great week. Happy Super Bowl Sunday.